just got the joyous experience of being the co-pilot for my grandson on his first trip of any distance as a new learner's permit driver, however you would have me put that. And it was a really neat experience. He did really well. I was really proud of him, and also proud of a question he asked. He asked me about, of all things, astral projection. And no, I'm not going to do tonight's content on astral projection. That's something for another show, another time. But I am going to talk about the third leg of Chaos Magic, the third leg of this stool that I built my journey into Chaos Magic upon. And that is releasing the desire for the results. In Buddhism, this is called the paradox of desire. It says basically this: as long as I desire a thing, I am in the state of paradigm of being without it. Well, that's actually my paraphrase of what they say in the Buddhist state. Because this idea, this mental state, I've accepted my everything that I do, everything that my mind does, it is kind of locksteps in with that reality. It's accepted and moved upon this realm because we just move out of habit. Because this idea of being without whatever it is we're desiring is our mental state, it creates the reality that we're experiencing, because everything we experience it's a reflection of our own projection. And it's everything in this creation around us that we've created, everything that we have placed in and around us is simply a mirror. It's a reflection of some part, some aspect, some piece of us, some piece of the hologram. Intense desires are called lusts, and the more basic desires, hunger, or the need for desire for oxygen, those are quote unquote needs. And the Buddhists and the Hindus traditions both say that it's possible to reach a state. No, they don't say that. They say it is impossible to reach that state, that the state of having no desire is nirvana, and it is impossible to reach nirvana. Now, they do eventually explain how you can reach nirvana, how you can reach that state. But fortunately, when it comes to Chaos Magic, you don't have to have this down perfectly. It doesn't have to be to the T. There's some power that comes in just releasing the release, so to speak, or releasing the desire to release the desire. Wow, that's one of those, like looking in two mirrors, it goes deeper and deeper and deeper, forever and ever. You could keep saying that. And that's why the Buddhists and the Hindu traditions say there's no way to reach that. And there is no way to reach that. So our forever quest is to become, again, a divine, an individuated expression of this divine thing that is so vast and so far beyond anything that we can imagine, that as we approach it, it's a constantly moving target. And then once you reach that point, and I'm going way beyond what I intended, but that's okay. Once you reach that point, you move into a state of just accepting the movement and basically enjoying the ride rather than seeking the journey. But I've gotten far afield. Let me get back to how there are exercises that I do to create or to help facilitate that state of being where I release the desire, releasing the desire, letting go of completely the desire for the results, or as much as needs be to get whatever it is, whatever working we're doing, whatever desire we're trying to or not trying to fulfill. There's that paradox again, comes into play. Now there are certain exercises that I'm going to talk about here in a moment. Excuse me, meditative exercises will help you get around the mental gymnastics that it takes. And again, what you're doing is you're changing thoughts, you're changing the paradigm of thoughts, you're changing the juxtaposition of thoughts, you're changing your view of thoughts, you're changing your perspective of thoughts. But the first thing is go back, and I would suggest, if you haven't seen it before, and I'll try to remember to put the link down below. All you need is love, self-love. It was a video that I did, and you've got to come from a place of self-love as much as possible, and that's where the meditative practice goes. That's where the dark night of the soul comes in, that painful thing. But you've got to go through it. You've got to understand that those things are there for a reason. You put everything there for a reason, and I'll talk again about the chop kitchen later on, but you got to remember that. And second thing is remember the analogy of checking the cake. You can't put a cake in the oven and then open the oven door to look at the cake every few minutes and then wonder why the cake never gets done. And so there's a certain aspect of just letting things cook off until their time, and then there's a certain aspect of what we need to do with that. So in this analogy of the cake, you've got the cake in the oven. Instead of checking on the cake, now you're mixing the icing, you're preparing the icing, you're preparing maybe the decorations you're going to put on the cake, or anything like the coconut, or you're going to put some nuts on the cake. You're preparing other things, and then you're preparing dinner itself. So what you're doing is you're building things around that cake. And so there again, there's another paradox. You act as if, you've often heard me say. But I would say, first of all, go back to the video about self-love, because again, you've got to believe that you are worthy of getting this, and you've got to walk in that, and that's all part of this. And it's not a step. It's not just, some of you may embrace this and be able to move with it, but it's not because you just suddenly broke through. It's because you've done some work to this point. And some of you, this is a starting off point, and that's the beauty of all this. That's the beauty of all this. The second meditative practice is either you can do what is called the neti. I am not. As the thoughts come up of how you identify yourself in your meditative time, and you say, well, I'm not that, and I'm not that. Or another kind of variation of that is to imagine you're starting at your toes and coming up your body, that your body is dissolving into nothingness, into dust, and being blown into the wind, and those things take you to a place of nothingness, where there are no needs and no desires, and above that, and again, not a perfected act. It's something you work at. I don't want to blow smoke up your skirts, as they say. I struggle with this all the time. I struggle with these things, and all I'm doing is trying to share my struggles with you, so that maybe somehow it can shine some light on you, so it can hold some space for you to find your way and your path. The final thing that you've got to do is just outright reject any time the thought comes up: should have, could have, would have. Those are all words of doubt, because the reality is that you had no choice but to do what you did in that situation, because that was the way you have wired yourself. That was the things, that was what you have chosen to define your path. That was the route that you have chosen since before time. The Hebrew Bible says, before you were knit together in your mother's womb, before you became this mass of DNA, RNA, and strands, and became cells, and grew and expanded and became all this cellular mass that we have assembled together to call human beings. Before all that, before I knit you together in your mother's womb, I knew you. The thought. We are all a thought. And should have, would have, could have, I need to, all these words that speak of some other place than right here are words of doubt. We must embrace, and I know it's a trite phrase, but it is so true. We must embrace the concept of it. It is what it is. This present, your present experience is the only reality there is. And what happens is when you focus on the should have or the could have or the would have, you're focusing outside of this experience. You're ignoring this experience. You're turning your back on reality and you're embracing a world that you've created. And generally those worlds are not the ones you wish to have. It's like the old adage of whatever you're fearful of, that's probably what's going to happen. Whatever has your focus and your attention will have your energy. As I said before, thankfully, those of us who practice chaos magic, we trust that the effort, the results, we don't have to be perfected in this thing. It doesn't have to be absolutely spot on, that we can stumble and bumble and fart our way through as long as we get the results. And I've seen those results. And next week, I'll show you that as we begin to look at sigils. I'm going to show you how I design them and don't design them and play around with them. And they're a fun thing to do. And sigils are something to easily forget about. But make sure you, of course, write stuff down in your journal. We'll talk about that. But sigils are something to easily forget about. And then all of a sudden, when the shit happens, you are blown away. So next week, we'll talk about sigils. So until then, stay safe, stay cool, stay in the magic. Everything you do, everything we do is magic. Namaste.